So, today we're going to dive into a really fascinating scientific review. It asks a pretty huge question. When we're up against a massive modern medical crisis, could the answer actually be found in ancient wisdom? We're going to explore the incredible potential of what are called neuroprotective herbs in the fight against Alzheimer's. Okay, let's get into it. So, first, let's just get a handle on how big this problem really is. Alzheimer's isn't some minor issue, it's a full-blown healthcare crisis. I mean, the paper we're looking at says it's now the third leading cause of death in the US. That's a staggering number, right? And it really just hammers home how urgent it is that we find a better way to tackle this.
And that's really the heart of the mystery here. You'd think with all the brain power and money thrown at this, we'd have a breakthrough. But the paper points out something wild. Over 200 promising drug trials have failed in just the last 10 years alone. So the big question is, what are we missing?
So, to figure that out, here's what we're going to walk through. First, we'll look at why Alzheimer's has been such an unsolved crisis. Then, the search for new answers. We'll explore how ancient wisdom is meeting modern science, put a spotlight on some really interesting herbs, and finally, talk about the path forward from here. Okay, so to really get why these new ideas are so exciting, we got to look at what researchers used to focus on. For years, the science zeroed in on two main bad guys in the brain.
All right, first up, you've got something called beta amyloid. The easiest way to picture this is like sticky gunk, protein clumps called plaques that build up in the spaces between your brain cells. They just kind of gum up the works, you know? And for the longest time, this was target number one for new drugs.
The second classic sign is something called tau tangles. Now, these are different. They form inside the brain cells. See, there's this protein called tau, and its job is basically to be the scaffolding for the cell's internal highway system. But in Alzheimer's, it goes rogue, twists up into these tangles, and the whole highway just collapses from the inside out. But here's the kicker, and this is what the review really zeroes in on. Nearly all of those hundreds of failed drugs were designed to attack either the plaques or the tangles. And the fact that they didn't work, well, it's a huge clue that we've been looking at a much smaller piece of the puzzle than we thought. And that brings us to the search for new answers. Because if blasting the most obvious targets isn't working, we clearly have to rethink the whole game plan. And hey, this isn't just my take on it. The authors of this paper, they don't mince words. They say, and I quote, "The recent failure of drugs targeting tau deposits suggests a lack of accurate understanding of the complex pathophysiology of AD." Wow. I mean, that's basically scientists saying we need to go back to the drawing board.
And when you look at what that complex pathophysiology actually involves, man, it is a lot. It's not just one or two things. We're talking about everything from constant inflammation in the brain and something called oxidative stress, all the way to how your body handles sugar, the bacteria in your gut, even old infections. The picture is so much bigger now.
Okay, so this is where it gets really cool. The paper basically asks, if the problem is this complex, this multi-headed beast, why are we trying to fight it with a single silver bullet? Maybe we need something that can fight on multiple fronts at once. And that's where ancient wisdom starts to look like cutting-edge science. Think about it this way. A typical drug is like one screwdriver. It's designed to do one specific job really, really well. But Alzheimer's isn't a loose screw. It's a whole engine that's breaking down in multiple places. So what this paper suggests is, what if we stopped bringing a screwdriver to the job and brought a whole toolkit instead? That's the idea behind these medicinal herbs. So let's get into the specifics, right? The review shines a spotlight on several herbs that aren't just random plants. These are herbs that have been used for centuries in places like India and China, specifically for brain health. And now modern science is finally figuring out why they work. And wow, this table really lays out that whole toolkit idea perfectly. Just look at this. You've got ashwagandha, which helps fix the connections between brain cells. Then there's turmeric, which actually blocks that sticky amyloid gunk we talked about. Lion's mane literally helps new nerves grow. And check out cat's claw. It hits both the plaques and the tangles, and it calms down inflammation. You see, they're not just doing one thing. They're working on the problem from all these different angles.
All right. Let's zoom in on that first one, ashwagandha. You might have heard it called Indian ginseng. It's a huge deal in traditional Ayurvedic medicine, and what scientists are finding it can do, it's pretty incredible.
I mean, we're talking about actually regenerating the connections between neurons in lab studies. But here's the part that really got my attention.
This isn't just in a petri dish. They cite a human clinical study where people with mild cognitive issues actually saw real, measurable improvements in their working memory and their ability to plan and organize. That's huge. Okay, next up is one you probably have in your kitchen right now, turmeric. The magic ingredient in it is called curcumin, and you've probably heard it's a great anti-inflammatory, right? Well, what this review shows is that it does way more than just that. It seems to directly go to war with the amyloid process itself. The research shows it can help block the production of that gunk, it can reduce the plaques that are already there in animal studies, and it can even latch onto them and stop them from forming those really nasty toxic fibers. Okay, and for our last deep dive, we have this incredible mushroom called lion's mane, and its superpower, as outlined in this paper, is totally unique. So what makes lion's mane so special? It actually encourages your brain to produce more of something called nerve growth factor. I mean, the name says it all, right? It's literally helping the brain build and protect its own nerve cells. And again, this isn't just theory. The paper highlights a human study where it helped boost cognitive scores for folks who were already showing signs of mild decline. So you hear all that, and it sounds amazing, right? But, and this is a big but, what's the path forward? The researchers are really clear on this. While this is all incredibly promising, we're not talking about a miracle cure just yet. There are some major hurdles we still need to get over. Okay, so there are basically 3 big challenges. First, you have bioavailability. That's a fancy word for making sure the good stuff in the herb actually gets into your bloodstream. Second, even if it gets in your blood, it has to cross the blood-brain barrier. Think of it like a super exclusive bouncer for your brain. It's really hard to get past. And finally, you need big, serious, large-scale human clinical trials to prove that this stuff really works and is safe. But even with those challenges, the paper ends on a really hopeful note. The big takeaway is that this whole idea, this systems-based approach of using a multi-tool for a multifaceted disease, is a huge, mostly unexplored frontier. It's not just about finding the cure anymore. It's about opening up completely new ways to think about prevention and managing brain health for everyone. And that really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? As we stare down these incredibly complex diseases like Alzheimer's, maybe the future isn't just about inventing something brand new out of thin air. Maybe, just maybe, it's about blending that cutting-edge science with the deep, time-tested wisdom that's been hiding in plain sight all along.